Thank you. Round of applause for that. And I want to thank you, Maureen, from Women's Public Leadership Network. She'll be closing us out with the money-making section. How do we fundraise effectively? Maureen McInerney covering fundraising.
All right, I will run through this pretty quickly to just try and wrap us up by 3, and I appreciate you all for staying. My name is Maureen McInerney. I am the Director of Development and External Affairs at Women's Public Leadership Network. We are a national 501c3 nonprofit that invests in state-based efforts like Gotham Rising that are training and equipping center-right women to run for office. So we do have some online free resources that I will encourage you to check out. Fundraising is one of the topics we go into in pretty great depth right now with masterclass style videos by experts, all women from the right that have worked in PAC fundraising, presidential campaigns, local campaigns, and then we have worksheets, templates, etc. So, you as the candidate are your campaign's best fundraiser. There's no substitute for you. That doesn't mean that there's not ways that your staff and volunteers can support your fundraising efforts, but just knowing and staying grounded in this principle. I'm going to run through some of the basics. Know the law. You have to know the fundraising rules where you are running in your jurisdiction, and you have to follow them. Do not cross any lines for $1. It is not worth it in the long run. Ultimately, you are responsible for knowing the law. And if you delegate that out to a member of your staff or to a volunteer, just assume the risk with that. You should have a gut reaction to some of the things I'm going to cover, especially in compliance, but the folks at the Leadership Institute have also used the word compliance already. It is hugely important that you remain compliant throughout this fundraising process. These are some contribution limits for City Council. If you're running for City Council right now, and I think all of our candidates have left the room, but look those up. There is a difference in New York City. You cannot get more than $250 as a contribution limit from anyone doing business with the city. Now, you can't receive any funds from businesses or LLCs. So if the check has a business name on it, hand it back respectfully. If it gets to your office and it gets mailed to you, know that you can't cash it. If you cash it by mistake, it should be caught in the compliance process and you can return the money. So that's one of these gut reactions. You cannot accept business checks. But from an individual who works for a business that is currently under a contract with the city, you can only accept $250. Up in Massachusetts, if you work in anything in the finance industry, $200. So just knowing these sort of gut reactions that you have to have. In-kind contributions. Does everyone know what in-kind means? It means that if you would have spent $1,000 on food at an event and the restaurant owner says, don't worry about it, I've got you, the cost of the food and what he would have sold to you counts as a contribution. And it counts towards these limits as well. So hugely important that you're considering goods and services. Nothing is truly free. Nothing is really a gift, all right? It should all be tracked and maintained. It's a great way of someone contributing to your campaign, but just knowing that they can't give you $10,000 worth of services if the limit is $1,000. Candidates are prohibited from accepting from corporations, I put here. And in terms of political committees, they have to be registered with the CFB, which is your oversight board here in New York, and there is a link there. Everyone will get this presentation through Vanessa from me. But these resources are online, and they're not hard to find. Again, it's a gut reaction. If you get a PAC check, before you cash it, check that they're registered with the CFB. It is a worthwhile extra step. Reporting requirements, disclosure statements, what comes in and what goes out, which includes, and this is where it gets sticky, if you're going to be doing a big mailing and the person, if the mail goes out but you haven't been invoiced for the work, you need that invoice. If the mail went out the door, that invoice has to be reported. It's a cost and expenditure by your campaign. I don't want to talk too much on the spending side, but in terms of what these statements entail, it has to be a coordinated effort between campaign manager and finance staff. I don't know how big your staffs are going to be or what role you might be playing in this, but the treasurer of the campaign and ultimately the candidate. If If it's your name on the ballot, you need to know what is coming into your campaign and what's going out. The treasurer is hugely important. It is also legally their name involved in these filings. There are professional treasurers as well that you should probably consider if you're running for a pretty large office. Again, these links here will be helpful after the fact. Other than that, back to the basics, establish a plan and set goals. What do you need to spend to win? What are you planning to invest in your own race? You and your spouse need to decide the true answer to this question, and then the answer that you're going to sort of lead with. Consultants will talk you into spending more money. You will get bit by a bug in a close race, close to election day, and want to spend more money. So I don't recommend that you spend as much as you're willing to right out the gate. However, it is a sign to other donors, investors in your race that you're a serious candidate, and you need to know what you need to win, and you need to propose a plan that will get you to that point in order to ask folks to invest in you. The third point, make a list of friends, family, professional contacts who will support your campaign. I'll say this again and again, if you do not have a Christmas card list, start one. And then set aside time every week. I agree with the points that have been made. I think Councilwoman said you have to be out the door, you should be in the office. If you're in the office, you should be on the phone. And you should be on the phone with folks who would only give to you at the other end of the phone. In crafting your ask, people expect political candidates to ask for money. I have worked on both sides of this. I've worked for campaigns and I've worked for candidates and nonprofit leaders that are big contributors to campaigns as well. This has already been said by pretty much every speaker, but they're making an investment in your vision. They're making an investment in themselves and their businesses and the benefits that having you as a public policy leader will bring. It is not for you personally. If they want the positive impact of having you in office, that is a worthwhile investment, and you need to make that case to them. In building out a fundraising call script, use sort of the formula, absolutely introduce yourself and say why you're calling. You would be surprised how often people forget to ask for money throughout the call. It is important to say, I'm looking for support, I need your support. Gas up the person you're talking to. I can't do this without your support. You are such an essential piece of this. Explain why the race is important. So, Vanessa has talked about, okay, well, what are the identified seats? Are you in one of these competitive districts? What's the impact of if we flip this seat? Why you are a good candidate and able to flip that seat. What you'll do, how you can win, that's a hugely important one. And then connecting your race to them personally. Tell them how they can help specifically, and listen. Listen should be the first one, and especially if the person you're talking to has an opinion on something. If they come out of the gate and they say, well, where do you stand on abortion, before we go any further? I would really recommend asking where they stand on abortion. Asking them, why it's important to them, saying that you respect how passionate they are about that. It's really important to know what the issues are that are important to them so that you can be the person who is on the same page, who is pushing those issues forward as well. Or at least not fighting against them. Being as specific as possible is knowing, are you inviting them to an event? Is there something timely? What is the cost? What is your goal? And actually sitting there, once you've done this ask, I'd like you to support by donating $1,000. Women especially will then immediately start to hedge that. And they'll say, but if you can't do $1,000, we could take whatever you're able to give, or your time at an event, or you can just come to the event. No, you have done the awkward part of asking for money. If you get this sentence out of your mouth with a period on the end of it, your job is done, the hard part's over. It is now profoundly more awkward for that person to tell you no. So sit in silence, count to 10 if you have to. Absolutely, it is their turn to be put in the awkward position of saying yes to you, which is the easy road, or saying no, which is an awkward conversation. Be sure that you know how much someone's given to your campaign before before you ask them for money for two reasons. One is legal, and the other is just the optics. Donors need to know that you know what's going on. You cannot leave them with the impression that you have no idea what's going on in your own campaign or their contribution to your campaign. And take notes. Take notes on every interaction with the voter, because anyone that's 100% in your corner, even if you didn't know them going in, should be then categorized as a potential grassroots donor. But take notes to personalize thank you notes, and to make sure that you know what issues are important to them. If they don't max out to you right away, you can go back to them and say, hey, we've made progress on this issue. Try and bring in some of those personal touches. Leveraging your own personal network. Holiday card list, Christmas card list. Start one. If you're thinking about running in 2 years, start one now. Because some of these family friends, the first time they hear from you outside holidays 10 years ago should not be you asking them for money for your political campaign. So start that personal relationship. Create an organized list. We're in the age where now everyone should have Google Sheets and Excel. These Christmas card lists, if they're not already, should have first name and last name separated, email address, phone number, mailing address, and then as you move into the campaign, a dollar amount that you'll ask of them and other notes. It's good to set a goal. What does this person have for personal capacity? And this is where it gets really important too, because you're going to separate out, some of those grassroots asks. Some of the people, it's like, yep, I know they'll give me something, but it may not be more than $100. Try and test that by putting them on an email. If they donate via email, then you don't have to spend time on the phone calling them. If you're getting to your goals. And those are people that your staff can go back and call them after Q2 and say, hey, we're super grateful. This is the impact of the grassroots donor network that we've built. And we're really hoping that dedicated, early supporters like you would double down at this point in the campaign. But a lot of that can be done by folks that aren't the candidate. Anything that you would consider substantial, wherever you think that cliff is in your campaign that separates a grassroots donor from a major donor, the candidate should be calling and contacting the major donors. And keep track of who you meet. Dumping business cards. This is a great way of thinking about your role as a staff or a volunteer. All right, a candidate's at an event, they're working a room, you are following them, making sure that you get the first and last name, the business card, etc., the contact information for the folks that they meet, any notes that are relevant to their conversations, and that you're putting that in the database for them. Candidates, if you have to do this on your own, it's obviously possible. That's something I would do outside business hours if you can, to preserve your ability to contact voters and donors during the day. So in thinking about a finance team, they don't have to have political fundraising experience, but they have to have a few qualities. Sales is great, fundraising experience is great, you're going to be told no, both in voter contact and in fundraising. If you're never getting told no, you probably aren't in the right places, you're not doing enough. Being told no is just part of campaigning. They should have a positive attitude and be personable, not just to you as the candidate, all right? These are some of the more stressful times. These are the times you as a candidate are being told no, or your candidate's being told no. Having a really negative person in the room is not going to be good for the overall health of this operation. They should be nothing but professional, have the ability to multitask, and have strong attention to detail. If this is not a person that's passionate about follow-up, if you interview them and they don't send a follow-up thank you email, they're probably not the person that you should hire on your finance staff. A finance director can be full or part-time staff. They would manage the finance operations. It's ultimately, they're preparing these reports, likely if you don't have a professional treasurer. They should have as many backup copies of documentation of everything that comes in and goes out. They are staffing you during call time. They may be staffing you at events. Other folks can take on that role, but should ultimately come back and add to whatever database or CRM the finance director establishes, which again can be from a Google Sheet all the way up to a CRM like Nation Builder or like the technology that Kim introduced us to earlier. Drafting and editing content, I'll point out, just because it's in the candidate's voice doesn't mean the candidate has to spend the time drafting that message. A fundraising consultant. Not every campaign needs one or can afford one or has one. They usually come in with their own list. They'll come in, with high net worth donors that may be interested in you that often follow around the fundraising consultant. They own their contacts. They may be contacting them on your behalf, having a ghost account in the candidate's name, setting up meetings with donors that then the candidate attends, and they'll work on a strategy and timeline. Again, a consultant is very different than the finance director, and to the earlier point of, what's in my job description and all hands on deck, the finance director is a member of your team first and foremost. And the fundraising consultant is not always. They may not be in the office to stuff envelopes when you need them to. A finance assistant, this would be great. Part-time staff or interns, again, looking for the same qualities. High attention to detail, highly organized, good for setting up events, etc. Grow your team when you grow the budget. I would start with a lean and efficient team. And again, for races like City Council, you're going to be taking on a lot of this yourselves. Now, Finance Committee. These are folks that do not work for the campaign. They are highly motivated supporters of the campaign. They themselves should be donors. They are, potentially voters. If they live in the district, they're absolutely voting for you, but they don't have to. The chairman or co-chairman, as it was recommended earlier, should be somebody who has financially invested in your campaign, has the ability to, has a network, and adds credibility. A lot of times this is a local business owner. This is, a longstanding member of the community. Think about reputationally who you want as an ambassador of your campaign, but also who has the network and is willing to reach out to them. Have a discussion with them openly about how they can share the load with this outreach. The candidate cannot be everywhere all at once, and there is no substitute for the candidate, but what can the chairman accomplish without the candidate? And then diversifying your committee. Think about a check writer or two or three. If it helps to give somebody a title, then add them to the finance committee. If it doesn't help and it's going to be more work to try and corral them, then they don't necessarily need to be a part of it. I would always have a member of the business community. I would have someone deeply involved, so head of a volunteer organization, a nonprofit, and I would also have a young professional. It's a changing game. It's constantly evolving, the landscape. I would just have somebody that knows something that you don't, and that is sort of a net add to your network. Aim for 5 to 10 people serving actively. Again, adjust up based on the size of your district. It shouldn't be something that is an act of herding cats. It can be difficult to manage upwards, and just knowing that this is probably your staff that's going to be regularly communicating, a weekly update, perhaps a monthly meeting that you're organizing. That can be a call or in person. I find in person to work better. And just keep them motivated and set goals. Not everyone needs to be a max out donor, but they all have to have expectations and deadlines. And that's why I think regular meetings contribute to the culture of meeting those expectations, hitting those deadlines. In case you are not familiar, the term bundling is the act of collecting checks for a candidate. That's a great thing to send out folks to bundle. So if you have, for example, a max out event with the governor, and he's going to come, in New York, though, would have been governor, and he's going to come and support your candidacy, maybe that costs a max out donation, but a single young professional could bundle checks, and they could earn themselves a spot by coming in with 10 different checks to represent that amount. Being part of your committee is a responsibility, but also frame it as a networking opportunity. This is an opportunity for like-minded professionals who are all centered around you, may not know one another, to network with one another and strengthen their own professional networking relationships. So the finance plan. First of all, you have to understand your district. Do some basic research early on. What have they raised and spent? Folks who have both won and lost for this seat. Were they challengers? Were they incumbents? Was it an open seat? How does that compare with your race? What are you compared to them? Super important to know what your opponent has in the bank as well as on hand. In New York, you do have a spending limit, both in off cycles and within cycle that you're running. So it is good to know that even if somebody has $1 million in the bank, they can only spend the $400,000 that you're allowed to within the race. And then what cycle are you in? Who's on the top of the ticket? How does that affect campaign costs? You know, how many candidates and campaigns are vying for advertising space? How many, that's gonna drive up search prices, social media advertising, things like that, whereas newspaper ads may be fixed, but you may have to get in early. All things to consider in terms of how much it's gonna cost to win your race. How much are you expecting to raise? How much will it cost you to raise those funds? Ideally, it costs you very little to bring the money in the door, but it should never exceed 25%. And when will it come in and when will it be spent? So cash flow timeline. And that's, you know, disclosure reports will sort of force your hand in thinking about and monitoring this. But if you are running in a race where there is a big gap between disclosure reports, you should have your finger on the pulse of these numbers. Overestimate your costs and underestimate your fundraising, or you may have to lend your campaign money. And then tips, set realistic goals and hit them. Be careful who you share sensitive financial information with. This is not just who has, your bank account number. This is very much when you're on the phone with a donor and you want to give them a realistic picture. The questions that they want answers to are how much do you need to raise to win, how many votes do you need? Again, things that have all been covered. Do not go negative with the folks on the phone. There's a difference between being realistic and being negative. You don't want to share with them that you just wasted a bunch of money on a TV ad that was a big flop, or that you filmed it but it'll never go to air. You don't want to share that kind of stuff. You don't want to share any sort of staffing issues that you may have or turnover on the staff. You want to have a presentable view of your campaign. It's okay to be honest and straightforward and say, I can't go on TV until I raise another $100,000, because that is very different in the mind of a potential donor. And then counting pledges separately from money in the door. Okay, if you have everyone in this room pledged $1,000, and then I only collect half of that, and then I spend the whole next quarter chasing down the other half, have I added anything to my finance plan, to my accounts? No, I haven't. So again, it's just about underestimating your fundraising, overestimating your costs. It is not real until it's in the door. A pledge is better than not, but it is not real money until it's in your account. I have some sample finance plans in here that I can give you all, and then quickly some do's and don'ts. Be confident, keep good records, thank your donors. We didn't talk enough about thank you notes, but handwritten thank you notes, again, establish these cliffs in your campaign. If you're doing a federal race, it may be anything over $1,000. It's a handwritten thank you note. If you're doing a local race, it may be anything over $200. But thank you notes are important. Set aside time to do handwritten notes. That can be handwritten by a member of the staff and signed by the candidate, or it can be handwritten by the candidate. It should include a personal touch. Play a leading role as the candidate in fundraising, and watch where your money is being spent. Don't break the law, overcomplicate, overshare, or take things too personally. You will be told no. Remember, you are your campaign's best fundraiser. The last thing I want to add is, again, having worked with folks who are on the major gift side and are political donors, two things. I've had a lot of folks come to me and say, do you think my own boss would contribute to their campaign? And the answer is always not unless you ask her. I cannot tell you yes or no whether she will contribute to your campaign, but she will absolutely never write a check that she has not asked for. She also will likely write half the amount that you want her to, and you will have to go back later. I've also worked with folks all the way up through the finance team at the RNC, and I can tell you that a strategy that works if somebody's not ready to invest in you is to give them measurable goals and hit them. And that can be, I'm gonna have 100 volunteers by June 1st. And then you're gonna come back to them on June 1st and say, hey, I know you weren't ready to invest in my campaign, but I promised you in March that I would have 100 volunteers, and I could send you the list of those names today if you'd like them. You know, these are the events we have on the calendar. This is how often these folks are in the office. I'm really excited about it. The next thing we need is money to get our message on TV, radio. We need more pamphlets because we're getting them all out the door. Please invest in my race. A lot of candidates will make that promise and set that goal, and they will never follow up on it. And it will distinguish you from every other candidate that overpromises and underdelivers. So, with that, this is the URL to online training from Women's Public Leadership Network. This presentation I can send through Vanessa to all of you, and I'm happy to take any quick questions too.
Any questions for Maureen? Maureen, really great job. A round of applause. Thank you for being super thorough, so guys, a round of applause for yourselves really quick. Sincerely. You guys lasted an extra hour. I really do appreciate you guys coming through. It's a Saturday, it's a summer, it's nice outside. Not a summer, but the summer, right? And you guys joined me to talk politics. Why? Because New York needs us and all of us. So some of you that may not know, I always say that I'm an HR by profession and political operative by passion. Training and development is critical. We do have to understand how to get to victory and what we can do. So I want to sincerely thank both WPLN, Maureen, sincerely, this event couldn't have been made without you guys and your sponsorship, as well as Leadership Institute, having Mark Campbell and Rick Tyler join us from Leadership Institute to really make this a value add. So thank you to you guys. We are having another event. You could save the date because I'll start promoting. It's going to be on Sunday, September 24th, and it will be around Get Out the Vote efforts. What does that entail? What do we need? Guys, I was blown away when I was running my campaign. I thought all that mattered was that runway going up to Election Day, but you need a whole other game plan on Election Day. When we're talking about getting poll watchers, having people standing outside of each poll site. Here I am thinking, new candidate, I'm going to each poll site, and I'm like, oh, let me say hi to some voters. My opponent had every poll site staffed from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., and they had like 3 to 9 employees working outside. So here, I didn't know that. So we're gonna be sharing all that information with you guys on Sunday, September 24th. Be on the lookout for that. But city council races are important. New York City's important. We need 35% of the 5 boroughs to vote Republican to win New York State. That's why we want to start building infrastructure. A lot of people think, oh, it's so much work, 5 boroughs, it's blue, right? 8 million voters, it's so daunting. But events like this, and you guys showing up on a Saturday, I keep highlighting that because it's the summer. People want to go to the Hamptons, people are having family events, but you were here talking politics with us, which I really, really appreciate. Another point that I want to make, less than 10% of voters come out. It's a once-in-a-decade opportunity this year. That being said, I did some research. Allie did the research, Allie, my intern. So every favorable district, so we have 6 current seats. We identified 9 favorable, but there were some characters that I didn't really want to get behind. We don't want another George Santos. I won't name the ones that we're not supporting. But we've got 7 that we're really going to support. Volunteering, fundraising. I'll be sending the decks. I'll be sending what candidates we want to, if you guys are interested in donating to. I'll send all of that via email or reach me, DM me, what have you. But long story short, 7 in addition to the 6 districts. If you're defining victory, I want to flip 5 more seats, bring 11 into city council. That's what victory looks like for me after November and us in New York, okay? So that being said, with that, the support is needed because it's important to New York, restoring balance. You heard Councilwoman Vicky Palladino, who made the trek out from Whitestone to share what she's up against and how the imbalance is impacting them, okay? So Allie's research for almost every of those 7 favorable districts that can be flipped, less than 10,000 voters. I know it's less than 2%, but you need 8 to 10,000 votes per district. Registered voters per district, it's like 60,000 to 100,000. This is an off election year. We just need 8,000, 10,000 people to vote Republican in those districts, and we've got victory in those seats. So what does that look like? We will be leveraging data, AI, having volunteers. It is, I think we're 8 or 9 weeks out until November 7th. So please get in touch with me. New Battleground Project, I want to shout out Mario who's here. He started his organization. Shout out to Gotham Rising. Really getting out there, trying to reach across the aisle. Yes, we're in a blue state, but finding those moderate Democrats and the independents that could vote our way, and the New Battleground Project is doing an incredible job. All right, so thank you for making the trip out from Long Island. Other than that, guys, we've got to take pictures if we want to step outside. We are done. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.